Syrian Christian poet Khalil Gibran writes the following verse titled, "On Friendship." Your friend is your needs answered. He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving. And he is your board and your fireside. For you come to him with your hunger, and you seek him for peace. When your friend speaks his mind, you fear not the nay in your own mind, nor do you withhold the I. This poem reflects one of the most impactful relationships in Jewish scripture, and one we read about in this week's Torah portion, the unlikely friendship between Moses and Jethro. Jethro, in Hebrew Yitro, is not an Israelite. In fact, he is a priest of the Midianites, an enemy tribe. He becomes Moses' father-in-law, and for a time he is Moses' boss, giving him a job in the family sheep-herding business. In other words, there are lots of reasons for tension and strife between these two men, from enemy people, the in-law relationship, and the family business. But in an unusually detailed narrative, we see only deep affection and trust between them. As one of my bar mitzvah students hypothesized, this could possibly be the world's first bromance. When the two first met, Moses was at an extremely desperate moment in his life. In rage, he had killed an Egyptian taskmaster who was whipping an Israelite slave. When the Pharaoh found out, Moses fled his palace home and ran for the hills, finding himself in the desert with no food, no water, no contacts, no plan. Likely, he was also burdened with the feeling of shock for his own capacity for violence, fearful for his life, and confused about his identity and his future. Your friend is your needs answered. Jethro took this lonely stranger into his home. He fed him, tended to him, nourishing his body and soul. This act of generosity and compassion becomes the foundation for a lifelong friendship. You come to your friend with your hunger, and you seek him for peace. Jethro became Moses' confidant. When Moses reported to him God's command that he confront the Pharaoh and liberate the Israelites, Jethro encouraged him forward with blessing, even though it meant his daughter and grandsons would be at risk. After the Exodus, when the two men reunited, they embraced and wept and sat up all night talking, with Moses telling Jethro everything that had happened. When your friend speaks his mind to you, fear not the nay in your own mind, nor withhold the I. I imagine that there were many times in their relationship when Jethro, listening to Moses go on and on, probably needed to bite his tongue, probably hesitant to question Moses' choices as a husband, a father, and a leader. The two had invested many hours of compassionate listening and encouragement, and that was important because at certain moments, when he felt it was necessary, Jethro then gently but firmly inserted himself. When he was in danger of neglecting his family, Jethro gave Moses no choice and brought him his wife and his sons. And then, as we read this week, Jethro gently but directly tells Moses that he was not handling his job of adjudicating cases well, and that as a result, everyone was suffering. Moses heeded Jethro's critique, inspiring a system of justice that still functions today. And certainly, criticism is painful to receive. But I'd like to believe, and we have every reason to think, that Moses, even if he was a bit hurt, was very open to hearing what his father-in-law said. He followed what he said, and that beautiful relationship continued. It's a reminder that the closest and richest friendships are founded on trust, knowing that disagreement and loving feedback can be a pathway to deeper understanding. Jethro and Moses navigated their friendship at a very challenging time. They were surrounded by war and oppression, and often they were on opposite sides of the divide. Sound familiar? I'd like us to take in their example, to let their partnership be our guide. We find ourselves again at a time that is so fraught with distrust and rage and bloodshed that even friends and family are turning away from one another, bad-mouthing each other, refusing to hear each other, not talking to one another. This is exactly the time to lean into relationships, even though we are feeling vulnerable. This is the time to trust in friendship and in honest communication, even though sharing our feelings and our ideas can be scary and sometimes may hurt. It's hard to reach out across divides when so much surrounding us seems to foster fear and defensiveness. Social media is rife with slogans feigning righteousness, but promoting hate and closing off avenues of understanding. So we really need to be very mindful of what we take in. What are the articles we choose to read? Which videos do we watch? Which speakers do we choose to go hear? Do we ask ourselves if this will further our distrust and defensiveness? Because if we think it will, maybe we shouldn't do it. Do we go expecting these people? Do we read these articles expecting that they will widen our perspective? If not, maybe we should find the ones that will. Personally, I was feeling so overwhelmed by despair that I made a commitment a couple of months to myself, and that I decided to really spend almost all of my time seeking out spaces that foster unlikely friendships like Moses and Jethro. That's the place where I go for my news analysis, for discussing strategy, for cultural pleasure. I go to places where people come together, even in difficulty. Now, unfortunately, these are not organizations and opportunities that pull a lot of public attention. But once you look for them, you'll find that there are so many shared efforts between people involved in the conflict that prioritize relationship building and nonviolence. Here are just a sampling of some that have offered just to me in these past weeks, webinars, programs, resources, and opportunities that have become my lifeline and inspiration. And in a few days, I will post them so that you can explore them too. Combatants for Peace, Founded by former IDF soldiers and Palestinian prisoners, this organization still persists in its mission to end the occupation and work toward coexistence. Parents Circle, a group unique in part because it doesn't want new members. It brings together people grieving the loss of loved ones who died in the conflict. Palestinians, Israelis, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, they provide one another support and they work toward negotiated peace. Speaking of these last two groups, on May 2nd, I will be leading a discussion of the book A Paragon. It tells the story of two of their members, Rami and Bassam, a Palestinian father and an Israeli Jewish father, who each lost a child in the violence, who forged an incredibly close friendship, who are still doggedly doing interviews and speaking tours, even when they, because of the violence, because of restrictions made so that Rami cannot leave their home, have to do so by Zoom. Please feel free to read this beautiful book and discuss it with us on May 2nd. Mejdi Tours, a travel agency founded by West Bank Palestinian Aziz Abu Sarah and his Jewish friend Scott Cooper, leads trips to Israel and Palestine and other places that wrestle with challenge, providing tourists with very full perspectives of the delights and of the problems from all perspectives of the people who live there. These friends also went on to found Interact International, an educational center combating Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of hate by building global empathy and understanding through sharing multi-narratives that are in conflict. Some of these unlikely and remarkable friendships cross lines of politics and policy. After founding Tagir, a Palestinian national movement promoting nonviolence, West Bank Palestinian Ali Abu Awad partnered with his friend, West Bank settler Rabbi Hannah Schlesinger, to co-found Roots, a Palestinian-Israeli effort to promote peaceful dialogue and to build trust. There are large groups like the Alliance for Middle East Peace, a coalition of more than 160 organizations and hundreds and thousands of Palestinians and Israelis building cooperation. And there are small grassroots organizations like Rabbis for Human Rights, of which I am a proud member, which has members from every movement of Judaism working to promote social and economic justice within Israel and within and about the occupied territories. Some of these organizations build bridges through the arts. The Jerusalem Youth Chorus provides young people with a space to grow together in dialogue and in song. In the weeks after October 7th, some of these teenage members described that they still didn't feel comfortable talking to one another. But even in that discomfort, they were able and grateful to raise their voices together, and that those brief but sustaining moments brought them hope and respite. You can find partnership work in areas of shared necessity. The academic and research-focused Arava Institute brings together Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, Middle Eastern people, and international students who live and study together in the Negev with the goal of developing environmental resources for the region. Shortly after October 7th, some students needed to leave to enlist and serve in the army, to return home, but most stayed and have continued to support each other, regularly meeting for community discussions. None of this is easy, and friendship is not a magic panacea. I hear from participants in the organization Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, an organization building relationships between American Jewish and Muslim women, that some friendships, years in the making, have been deeply strained and are still striving to recover. Some friendships forged through seeds of peace have not withstood the enormous tension that exists. But most relationships, most friendships do remain. And once they can make it past moments of challenge like this, they emerge even stronger. Perhaps you were one of the 1,300 Jews of varying political positions and backgrounds invited for Shabbat dinner last week at Ayat, a Palestinian restaurant. For obvious reasons, I couldn't go on Shabbat, but I will be going there in the weeks and months ahead. And if you want to come with me, I'd be happy to take you. I'd like to close with words from a modern-day Moses and Jethro. If you haven't yet heard about the Palestinian Jewish rap duo, Dugri, don't wait any longer. Go home and Google them. Samech Zakaut and Uriah Rosenman have been writing and performing songs that reveal shared hurts and nourish shared hopes. They recently toured the US, and I hope that we will bring them here when they return. In the meantime, I recommend listening to their music, and here are a few words that they shared in a recent BCC interview. Samech said, "My heart is cut to two pieces. We have to find a new path. In a minute you can hate, but the hard thing to do is build." You might think I would tell Uriah, "Let's stop what we are doing. You are my enemy. You took our land." Or maybe you would think that he would now accuse me, "You are a terrorist. You want to kill Jews." No way. We are out of this game. Even with all this, our friendship wasn't damaged. It didn't move us an inch. And Uriah said, "There are people who understand that no violence will bring a solution, but I'm worried about the future. People want an easy solution. They want something to hold on a sign and to chant. Samech is my ally. He is such a good person. We will always be friends." Your friend is your needs answered. He is your field which you sow with love and reap with thanksgiving. Come to him with your hunger and seek him for peace. Amen. May it be so.